Hey y'all, let's get into this episode of Love and Marriage Huntsville, Season 6, Episode 14, titled Kiuwhaaaaat. And if you enjoy this review, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe. Now let's get into it. So we pick back up with Kimmy telling Kiuwhaaaaat that she felt like it was a lack of integrity on her part to allow something to be perpetuated that's not actually true. Kiuwhaaaaat tells Kimmy that she's sorry she feels that way, but she has no control at all over what people say and that people say a lot of stuff. Kimmy tells Kiuwhaaaaat that's true, but there were things said such as y'all started dating before we were divorced. And Kimmy tells Kiuwhaaaaat that people feel like Kiuwhaaaaat was saying that Kimmy was the one who caused their divorce. And she says that some of the implications that were made allow people to run off with the narrative that just wasn't true. Kiuwhaaaaat starts flipping her hair and says that she doesn't really know how she's responsible for that. And Kimmy says that at the end of the day, Maurice's biggest concern is Monster. And Kiuwhaaaaat nods her head and says, And Kimmy tells Kiuwhaaaaat that Maurice didn't want to do anything that was going to harm Monster. Like if he saw the show one day when he grew up later on. And Kimmy says that Monster was a big concern for her too, because she also has a child that she doesn't want to think that, his mom did what? Kimmy says she had to take a lot of heat for something that she didn't do, and that her son had to see that so that they could protect Kiuwhaaaaat and Maurice's son. And Kiuwhaaaaat just nods, and Kimmy says that she did her best not to belabor the point, and the point was to get Monster to live with Maurice and to keep Maurice happy. Because Maurice is a 12-year-old who'll throw a tantrum if he don't get what he wants. But Kimmy says that she felt like she took a hit for the whole group so that they could keep everybody safe but her. And then they both just kind of stare back at each other, because I think Kimmy was waiting for Kiuwhaaaaat to say something at all, because all the fuck she been saying is okay, yeah, and I thought Maurice was the worst person to have a conversation with, but Kiuwhaaaaat got his ass beat, boy. Kimmy kind of just chuckles because she's basically having a conversation by herself. But Kiuwhaaaaat tells Kimmy that she hears her and she understands what she's saying, and that she didn't even know she had those feelings, and says how would she know what Kimmy's feeling if they never had that discussion? So how would she have known that Kimmy felt that way? It's obvious Kiuwhaaaaat has adopted the Scottman behavior of ignoring shit until it's brought up to them and still acts clueless, because what do you mean? How would you have known that this stuff was affecting her? You started it, basically, because nobody else, none of the fans or whatever would have had the thought like, oh, Kimmy the side chick, if Kiuwhaaaaat didn't get on that reunion and basically say they didn't start dating until before she and Maurice were divorced. Like, it's just messy, and she try and play like she didn't help start a whole bunch of stupid shit. Kimmy kind of jumps out of her seat and asks Kiuwhaaaaat if she really didn't know that they were calling her a side chick. Kiuwhaaaaat says that she didn't know that Kimmy felt like she was obligated for that, and she didn't know her role that she played in that for Kimmy. And she says that if any of that makes any sense, which it don't make sense, and please end the scene before she pisses me off even more, because she's not saying anything. She's not taking accountability for anything. She's just like, oh, I'm sorry that you felt that way, which is never an apology. And if anybody ever apologizes to you like that, the shit ain't real. Kimmy is nodding her head like she's trying to process the BS. Kiuwhaaaaat says one thing that she can honestly say is growth within herself brought her to become enlightened on a lot of different things, not just this situation, but a lot of things. It says that nobody is perfect, and that we go through things in life and it has a different effect on people. So if she feels that she could have said something differently, for the record, she never said Kimmy was a side chick, if that makes everybody happy. And then she kind of chuckles and laughs. It's not a laughing matter, because when everybody was calling Kimmy a side chick, that's when that whole coleslaw shit was going on. So everybody was just like, well, is this a show full of side chicks? It was just a mess. In her confessional, Kimmy says she thought the conversation went well, and says that it was one of those apologies where if I offended you, I'm sorry, or if I made you feel this way, I'm sorry. Kimmy says that it was close, but it's as good as they're going to get today, and says that they're making small strides to a better place, and it might not be the place that other people think they should be, but it's definitely better for them. Kimmy tells Kiuwhaaaaat, well, anyway, that was it. She told Maurice that she would share that, and that she doesn't want them to go left, her and Kiuwhaaaaat, because she did share those concerns with her. And Kiuwhaaaaat says that she told her how she felt about it, and now she knows and she has a better understanding. So, and then Kimmy tells Kiuwhaaaaat that she's glad she came and glad that they could talk, and hopefully it's the last talk for this situation anyway. And Kiuwhaaaaat says with a dry tone that it should be. And I'm just like, well, let's see what Maurice has to say about it, because if y'all didn't end shit the way he wanted y'all to, y'all gonna have to try again, and y'all know that. In a confessional, Stormi says that she wanted to meet with Mel today because she feels like they haven't had a one-on-one moment outside of the group, and that she wanted to have a conversation with her about where they stand. And then they show the clip of like the first episode of this season of Stormi asking Mel when was the last time they talked, and Mel says oh, well, you could have DM'd me, and Stormi's like, I'm not doing that shit. Stormi says she always likes to meet things head on, because when you don't, there's always room for interpretation and nothing is ever really crystal clear, and she likes clarity. So that is the main reason why she wanted to have this one-on-one with Mel. And my first thought was, did she have to DM her to set up this one-on-one? That was my very first thought. In her confessional, Mel says she agreed to meet with Stormi today because she's really trying to bring effective communication as much as possible, and says she's willing to have this one-on-one with her just to see where they are and where they're going, and to make sure that they are at least in a place where they can have some amount of peace. Stormi tells Mel that she's glad she came, and Mel says, of course. And Stormi says, it went down in a DM, right? And Mel says, that's right. And I laugh because I'm like, that's the only way to get through to Mel's ass. Obviously, she stayed changing her numbers, so you gotta hit that girl up in the DM. That's just what it is. Mel thanks Stormi for inviting her out and asks her how she's doing. Stormi says she's good, and then she asks Mel how she's been, because she knows that Mel did express that she was going through a lot with the court stuff, and Mel says yes, but she's good now. Stormi tells Mel that she hasn't seen her forever, especially by themselves. Mel says that she's glad that they're here today and that it's a start or a restart, and then she laughs, and Stormi says it is a restart, but says that she's been thinking about Mel and that she feels like Mel would rather avoid the harder conversations because it's easier to shut it down than go through it. Mel starts making faces and checks her phone and says if she avoided hard conversations, she wouldn't have hosted a tea or came to meet with Stormi today. Mel continues to say that based on what was even shared at the tea party, and mentioned how Miss Bettie shared how she felt about some things. And then Stormi cuts Mel off and says, yeah, we got to talk about that. And asks Mel how she feels about that in terms of that being her mom. And Mel says that that's what she was getting to. And asks Stormi if when they first started hanging out, did she know her mom's feelings about her. Stormi says that her mom is someone that she can't control, and that she didn't like Courtney when she first met her, and that Miss Bettie got issues with Stormi's friends and even her own sister, and says that her mom has this way of being hard up on anyone initially until she feels like they've done something worthy enough to break her down. And she says she's never been able to change her mind. Mel asked Stormi, but did she know her mom's opinion of her before? And she and Stormi started to chill. Stormi says that she knew her mom's opinion of her from TV, but her mom didn't know her outside of TV, so she shouldn't have really had an opinion. And Mel says, And then Stormi says that she can't stop her mom from saying what she wants to say, but she doesn't always have to agree with her. Melody tells Stormi that she doesn't believe that she agrees with her mom, but after dealing with everything with Tisha and her mom, she isn't in a position emotionally or mentally to be in a space where someone she's building friendship with, their mom doesn't like her. Stormi says that her mom felt like she was right about being vocal because they abruptly stopped progressing in their relationship like they were. And Mel says that Miss Bettie was vocal before they even met each other, and says that once she learned and saw all Miss Bettie had been doing and saying, even after she and Stormi had been chilling, for Miss Bettie to say, oh, don't trust her, I told you I don't trust her, Mel says that she's not trying to be in that space with anyone. And Stormi says, right. In her confessional, Mel says she's in a good place right now, and she's enjoying herself and not trying to fall for the okie doke again where people's moms trying to come for her. Sorry, not sorry, and I know some of y'all gonna try and eat me up, but I'm one of those people who miss Miss Wanda being on the show. I know she was messy, but I was here for all of the shit. Because all the moms are messy at this point. It was like once they got rid of Miss Wanda, they started bringing on other people's moms, and they just as bad. Can you imagine Miss Bettie and Miss Wanda having a one-on-one going head to toe? Who the fuck you think gonna win that shit? At this point, some of the mothers are just more vocal than others, and Miss Wanda had the best catchphrases and sayings, and the shit didn't always make sense, but it always made me laugh, especially when she told Tisha not to trust nobody who will buy their shoes out of a box or something like that. I don't know what it was, but it was funny. And I know a lot of y'all are Team Mel or whatever, and y'all don't like Tisha, but if they had a spinoff, I would watch it, because at this point they just bringing on Tiffany and Stormi and them to cause more mess, and I don't know, I just miss the OG cast for real. Stormi tells Mel that for her, she feels like shit started getting weird between them before any of that Miss Betty stuff. And Mel says, you do? And Stormi says, yeah, whether it was because Mel changed her number or needed her space or whatever, but they did start to taper off and things got distant. And Mel does the Kiowa and says, well, okay. In her confessional, Stormi says she doesn't know why it's so hard for Mel to express her true feelings, as opposed to trying to gaslight people and have them believe that there isn't an issue when she passive-aggressively always acts like there is one. So now she just feels like it is what it is, and she kind of laughs. Stormi tells Mel that now she's at a point where she's cool with how Mel is and what she expects from her, and Mel is nodding her head, and Stormi says so now when they have group meetings, they're all going to be good and no more weird energy. And Mel says she hopes not, and that's the end of that scene. In her confessional, Tisha says the Black Business Expo is really about the Comeback Group initiative and the people that's a part of it. So Maurice and Kimmy wore Tisha down enough to give the Comeback Group the credit. Great. But Tisha says that she made the executive decision to lock in the venue and invited everyone to the space to get excited about everything. And she's hoping they really like it and are still on board with moving forward. Kimmy arrives and Tisha asks Marsau what he thinks about the space, and then Martell arrives, and in a confessional, Tisha says that the main update she has for everyone is that Mel won't be a part of the expo, but Stormi and Courtney agreed to join. Martell kinda hits on Tisha a bit, talking about how she looked like she been in the gym, and Marsau asked Martell if he's talking about Tisha's boobs, and Martell says he meant the midsection, and Martell says that he can see that Marsau has been hitting the gym too, but just not like Tisha. And then in the confessional, Martell is cheesing and smiling and shit, saying that, yeah, Tisha looking good, and that there's nothing weird about that, and says that after helping Marsau out in the gym, he sees that Tisha is still looking better than him. Lord, wait till Mel sees this shit here. She gonna be livid. Tisha shows everyone the flyer and tells Kimmy, like, look, it has a Comeback Group initiative on there. Kimmy says she wasn't going to say nothing, and then they all kind of chuckle. And then Tisha mentions that she met with Mel, and Kimmy asked, well, what did Mel say? And Tisha says that Mel says with the history they all have within the group, Mel feels it's unfair that they asked her to be a part of the expo right now because everything is so fresh and soon. And Martell is making all the faces in the world. And then Tisha mentions how Mel says that even a few months ago, none of them were on speaking terms. And Tisha says that she understands, especially with everything going on with Mel and Martell and the kids. Martell cuts Tisha off and says that he doesn't think everything he and Mel is going through should fall into business ventures or friendships, and he thinks that they should leave the court stuff with the court and just keep everything separate. Tisha says that Mel didn't go into details about it, but says that she told Mel that she gets their group has been through a lot in the past few years, but imagine them doing this expo. It will show strength and unity for the community. Tisha tells Martell that she doesn't think that Mel not wanting to be a part of the expo is because of him, and Martell says that it has to be, and Tisha tells him that Mel even said that she didn't want it to be all about her and that she still wants them to move forward with the venture. In a confessional, Martell says for him, he can always put his feelings aside or any personal issues to help the community, and says that he's disappointed in Mel not being able to do so, with her blaming him at a time like this isn't going to help the situation. So he thinks it's better for both of them to put the personal aside when it comes to business or helping the community. Kimmy asked Maurice how he felt about this because his main thing was to have the original 6 there. Maurice says his first issue was with the spirit they started with, and that when Mel and Marsau started talking about the Comeback Group at first, he was excited about it, and to see later on how things started getting fucked up, he says that he can't sell something he doesn't believe in. Tisha says that this is bigger than all of them, and Maurice says, yeah, they had magic before and that they all let it go. In a confessional, Maurice says that he's a little disappointed that Melody won't be a part of the expo because he's inspired with what they all can do when they all come together, and it's a little disappointing that Mel won't be a part of it, and that they can't come together for the community. Marsau tells Maurice that he understands his perspective, but what he has to understand is that the need is still there and that the community is still showing up with their minds open. And Maurice says he's right, and everybody else chimes in saying that they're in. Stormi and Courtney walk in, and in the confessional, Tisha says that Melody backed out. However, they got Stormi and Courtney in place, so they're all happy about it. And then Tisha fills Stormi and Courtney in and says that this is the place the expo will be at and that she wants him to be a part of it. And then Martell cuts in to say that she wants them to be the replacement for Melody. And Tisha says that she ain't say that, and they all laugh. Martell is obviously still upset. I don't understand, though, why he gets upset that Melody doesn't want to be around him. I really do not get it. Like, just because she isn't trying to do anything for free or for some money, he's mad that she don't want to be in his space. Like, I'll never understand it, for real. Not everybody can be the fake bigger person, Martell. But Stormi says that she's down and she loves doing community events like this, and Tisha hugs her, and Tisha says that it looks like everyone is on board, and she walks down the steps to show everyone around, and Marsau whispers to Martell to tell him to stop looking at his wife's ass like that, and Martell bends over laughing. Tisha turns around and is like, "What's going on, Martell? You good?" And Marsau says he's trying to stop Martell from looking at his wife's ass. And Tisha says, "Come on, y'all, let's be serious for a minute." And then Stormi says that she looks at it too, if they're being fair. And who isn't looking at her ass at this point? I'm sorry, but it looked good in them jeans. And then Tisha starts walking backwards so nobody could look at her behind. And then Stormi tells them that every time she sees Tisha, she tells her how good she looks. In the confessional, Stormi says Tisha invited them there for the expo, but to be honest, the jeans are doing what they're supposed to do and no one else can see past her ass. Tisha asks Stormi if she can get Canvas products there to set up for the expo, and she says yes, and then asks who's going to be in attendance. And then I'm like, Tisha ain't fill you in? Like, what you mean? How you going to ask me to be a part of something and you ain't even tell them what they doing? And then in the confessional, Tisha says that the expo is going to be a success and that at the end of the walkthrough, everybody was on board and excited to get started. And Tisha says she feels like she did something good here. And then Martell says it's going to be nice and thanks them for putting it together. And that's the end of that scene. In the confessional, Maurice says he's going to take Monster to play basketball and says that he knows he's been on Monster a lot lately and he just wanted to give him a chance to relax a bit and chill. And then they play for a little bit and it's nice to see them having, father and son time. And Monster beats Maurice's ass badly, 14-2. Ayy. Maurice tells Monster that he brought him out there because he wanted to know how he felt about the conversation they all had with his mom and Kimmy. Monster says he feels like it was cool and it was needed, but it gets boring over time hearing the same thing over and over and over again. Maurice says he gets it and knows Monster gets tired of the lectures and that he gets tired of giving them, but the truth is that he's been treating Monster like him and he realizes that they are two completely different people and grew up differently. He explains how that at Monster's age, Marsau had 3 jobs and then Maurice had 2, and then the scarcity mindset he grew up with, he felt like Monster should have early on, but it doesn't mix because Monster grew up differently. Maurice says it took him asking questions and rethinking things to realize that Monster's reality is different. In his confessional, Maurice says it's hard not to give lectures even though that they are supposed to be playing basketball. It's just that he sees so much potential in Monster and he wants him to tap into it, and he feels that he would be doing his son a disservice if he didn't speak up when he saw something. Maurice tells Monster that the mistakes he makes as a parent, he wants to correct them as soon as he sees them and he wants to know who Monster is. Monster says it's taking time to figure it out himself, and then Maurice asks Monster if he ever feels like he wants to ask him anything, and then he says don't be afraid to just be like, "Hey Dad, this isn't working out for me." And then Maurice says that even though he's yelling at him sometimes, he could just be like, "Hey Dad, that's not how I get it." And Monster says that he thinks of it, he just doesn't say it. And Maurice asks why, and Monster shrugs. And Maurice says, "Why? Because I just gave you permission now." And Monster says, "Basically." And then Maurice says, "Well, you have permission," and tells him to speak freely and says it's really about him and his life and he just wants him to be the best he can be for himself. In his confessional, Maurice says some of the challenges of connecting with a teenager is that they don't always speak freely, and it's like pulling teeth trying to get an answer. So now you know how Kimmy feels when she's talking to your ass. And Monster says, okay, so since you said don't be afraid to ask questions, Maurice is looking all serious. Monster says once they leave there, can they go out to get something to eat? And I was like, oh, that poor baby wants some fast food. And then Maurice looks around and says yes, but Monster's gonna have to play him again in basketball. Maurice says, in the meantime, let's talk about something more important. And Monster says that he's hungry. That is important. He's smiling and cheesing and stuff. And then Maurice says he's hungry for his grades to be right. And Monster kind of rolls his eyes. And then Maurice says that he also has to do his responsibilities at the house. And then Monster says that that's a given. And Maurice says, since when? And then Monster says, since he started getting his phone taken for it. And Maurice laughs and says that's what he's talking about. And then Maurice tells Monster that he knows he's been working a lot, but that they're going to spend more time with each other. And then they end the scene. So Courtney shows up to his mom's house and they hug and stuff, and she gives him coffee, and he jokes about how it'll have him up all night. And his mom tells him that most things can be hard, but you just have to think about yourself and your family and your business. And then Courtney tells his mom that Stormi has been pressing him about having another baby. His mom asks really, and then says that she knows Stormi mentioned surrogacy. And then Courtney says that Stormi always tries to talk about it, but he kind of just brushes it off because he doesn't want to talk about it at all. And his mom says for real, and that doesn't really make sense to her. Courtney says that he just wanted to always make sure his family stayed together because he knows his mom was a single mom. And then Shelby says that when it comes to family, you have to step in and do what you need to do. And she felt that, some days she wasn't sure if she could do it being a single parent, but it works. Courtney says he and Stormi aren't getting a divorce or anything, but he doesn't want either of them to be single parents, and he wants them to always be close. And then Shelby says that she knows what it's like growing up without a dad, and when you're a parent, you want to protect your kids from any hurt or pain. And so she asked Courtney if he feels like being abandoned by his dad. Does he think that might have a lot to do with why he doesn't want any more kids right now? Courtney just stares at his mom for a minute, and then she says she knows he wants to pass the good stuff on to his son and do right by him, and that she says she remembers having a conversation with him, and he said that if he ever had a child, he would be the best father. And she says that she thinks he has been and that he's doing the best that he can do. And you can hear her voice cracking as she's getting emotional. And she says it makes her happy and proud seeing the connection Courtney has to his son, because that's not something Courtney had with his own dad. Courtney shakes his head a few times and then puts his head down in his hands, and he starts to cry. And his mom gets up to hug him and tells him it's okay. And Courtney says that he just feels like his dad missed out on everything. And his mom says he did, but that's his loss because he missed out on something so amazing. Courtney says that he would see his teammates with their dads, and then he starts to break down again. And man, I just want to give my mans a hug. Like, poor thing. In his confessional, Courtney says not having his dad around, he had to teach himself to play basketball, or tying a tie, or changing a tire on a car, and he wishes things could have been better while he was alive, because it's still some things that they didn't get a chance to talk about, and it could have been better for the both of them. And then he says he definitely doesn't want Chess to be fatherless, so he's going to be the best father he can be and be the father that he never had to his son. Shelby says it's okay to feel how he feels, but that means he's dismissing how Stormi feels, so he needs to be open to how she's feeling at that moment, because that's what husbands and wives do, and he has to put his feelings to the side and listen to her, even if he may not want to discuss it, because, y'all men are good for pushing stuff to the side, and Courtney kind of just shaking his head, but he's just like, yeah. And then Shelby says that if she had to choose to do it again, she wouldn't have spread all her kids out, because they have a better connection when they're closer in age, and says that he and Stormi need to have a conversation and be on the same level. And then Courtney says he'll talk to Stormi, but hopefully the conversation won't go bad. And then they end the scene. In her confessional, Stormi says today is the day of the Black Expo, and she's there early and on her own setting up, because the majority of her team is at the warehouse getting a huge retail order out, and Courtney is with them to make sure everything runs smoothly. Stormi tells Shelby that she's so stressed out and that Courtney is taking an order to New York, so she kind of feels like that she should be there, but she has a commitment to do the Black Expo, and says that they have to get that order there in time or they'll get penalized. And Shelby says that Courtney is going to make the deadline, no problem. Stormi says she thinks she'd be so stressed out because the stakes are so high, and she feels like every time she gets over one hurdle, she feels like she's running out of time, and says that she feels like she shouldn't have committed to this. Tisha shows up on time for once, I know, and is talking to her publicist, and apparently they got a lot more vendors to be a part of the expo, so they have to make more space, and the spots are filling up so fast. And in her confessional, Tisha says learning that so many people wanted to be a part of the expo is super exciting, and that she's really hoping that the space works out because she wasn't expecting it to be so many people there. Tisha walks up to Stormi as she's trying to set up her station and says, yeah, she took up the whole back corner, to her publicist. And then Stormi says that they didn't tell her about the dimensions or how many people would be there. And Tisha kind of makes a yikes face and says, yeah, it's 25 vendors. And Stormi says, yeah, she had to come up with all of that last minute. And then in a confessional, Tisha says, OMG, Stormi, you know, it's nice, but she literally took up the whole corner, and that she took up like 3 spaces, so hopefully it'll work out. Tisha, you can't be mad at that girl. You asked her last minute. Like, I'm sorry, but the whole way them Scots, like, kind of treated Stormi this whole last scene was a little funny acting to me. I don't know, especially because they asked them to do that last minute. It wasn't cool. Tisha is helping move things around when Marsau walks in, and then he starts trying to dictate everything and asking how much everything is, and then the balloons were apparently $325, and Tisha's like, well, since you asking me all these questions, where's your shit at? And he's like, oh, it's coming. And then Marsau comes in trying to tell everybody what to do, asking where this is and why that ain't here and all of this. And then in a confessional, Tisha says, dang, Marsau, how much coffee did you have this morning? Because you coming in hot, nigga. And he's like, you know, it's not coffee, it's just that they have a lot to set up, and that the vendors aren't there yet, and that it's still just a lot to do, and it's okay to come in with purpose. And Tisha says, nah, you came in on 20. And he says, it's okay, he should have came in on 50. Boy, please, because your whole attitude this whole scene was just bullshit. It was straight ass. And if I was Stormi, I would have been like, nah, fuck that, forget it, I'ma leave, for real. So asks Tisha if Stormi paid for a spot, and Tisha says no, why? And he says because she needs to. And Tisha says why? And he says because it's the cost of business. And she says why? Because black chocolate in a bottle didn't pay for one. And Marsau says he's not talking about that because he paid for a lot of this stuff. And Tisha says, oh, and rolls her eyes. Marsau shrugs and just says get the money, and that they told everybody in the group. Tisha says that they told everybody in the group that they could have a spot, not that they had to pay. And Marsau says that he thought they agreed even when he talked to Courtney about it, and tells Tisha to just go get the money. And Tisha says that's so tacky, why would she do that? Marsau says it's better to do it right now, and Tisha says, well, you go and do it then. And then he walks over to Stormi and tries to butter her up by saying, oh, he didn't know it was her because she looks shorter and younger, and then asks if she had a chance to send over that money. And she says, what money? And Marsau says it's $100. And Stormi says nobody told her about that, and why didn't they say it at the meeting, at the walkthrough? And Marsau says he doesn't know. And Stormi says that they should have, so she could have known before now. And she says it's weird coming up to her asking for $100, and says that it's very low vibrational and that he's bigger than that. Girl, no, the hell he not. And when she asked why they didn't say that at the walkthrough, why he say I don't know, that's not an answer for a businessman. The fuck, he expect to get that money? What is wrong with him? Tisha, get your husband, he messing up the coins, girl. Marsau tries to charm his way out of this, saying that he's gonna help her set up in the meantime and all of that stuff. And Stormi says that we don't do that at the Black Expo, it's very weird. And Marsau asks Stormi if she knows what would have made it weird, and she says what? And he says that if he didn't ask for it until like a few months later, and says that, but it's not a big deal. And Stormi says it's not, but it's giving low vibrational. I feel like even Kimmy and Maurice would have been mad about him asking for $100. Like, nigga, you playing right now. But Marsau says he just realized that Stormi is being low vibrational too, but with a smile. And Stormi asks, is she? And she says that she's always on a higher frequency. And then Marsau then asks Tisha to come over to where he and Stormi are, and I guess he had a brain fart and says that he's sorry, you know, Stormi's low vibrations made him forget or something. Stormi turns around and says, let me tell you what your husband did. And Marsau touches her arm, I guess, to try and get her to chill. And she says, don't touch me. And then she tells Tisha that he came over asking about, where's your $100 for the booth? In her confessional, Stormi says she knows this nigga didn't just come over there and ask her about no damn $100 like he's some kind of bill collector, especially at the last minute, and says that Marsau is out of his rabbit ass mind and thinks that, you know, for real, is this how y'all do business? It says that it makes sense to her now. That's why they came to her at the last minute, to see if she could add value to their event. It says from now on, she knows she's definitely not going to do business with Marsau moving forward. And then that's basically the end of the episode, and then they do to be continued. And the one thing about this scene that pissed me off was the fact that Marsau is basically about to mess up Tisha's good name, because even though Stormi said that she's not going to work with Marsau anymore, that they are both like a package deal, you know, not in everything, but it's just the point. He out here being petty about $100, like, come on, my nigga. But if you enjoyed this review, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.